Reverend Fathers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our second ministry forum, a presentation on unique parish ministries. I'd like to begin with offering a passage from the Gospel according to St. Matthew. It says, "Then he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was many furlongs distant from the land, beaten by the waves, and the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, 'It is a ghost.' And they cried out for fear. But immediately he spoke to them, saying, 'Take heart, it is I, have no fear.' And Peter answered him, 'Lord, if it is you, bid me to come to you on the water.' He said, 'Come.' So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, 'Lord, save me.' Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, 'O man of little faith, why did you doubt?' And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, 'Truly, you are the Son of God.'" We know from many ancient commentators of the Scriptures and from many of the Holy Fathers that the sea represents the world. And we see that there is the great wind and the waves of the sea in this story in the Gospel, and that represents the troubles, the difficulties, and the challenges of life that often face us. And we hear that the disciples are in the boat, and the boat often represents the church. But we see our Lord Jesus Christ walking on the water, in the waves, and in the wind, coming towards the boat. The Apostle Peter says, "Lord, if it is you, bid to me to come out to you on the water." And the Lord says, "Come." Peter takes a unique and extraordinary step by stepping out of the boat onto the water in order to go out to our Lord Jesus Christ. And so we have before you unique and extraordinary parish ministries that have stepped out of the boat, so to speak, that have reached out to find our Lord Jesus Christ to those who are in need in various ways, and they're here to share with you their extraordinary and unique experiences. So I would like to give your attention to our first presenter, Dr. Jim Gore of Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church in Nashville, Tennessee, who will be presenting to you the unique and extraordinary ministry of St. Sampson Clinic.
Thank you, Father Gregory. I'm going to start off, it's a little bit strange, but I'm going to start off in telling you what I'm not going to tell you. What I'm not going to tell you is that I'm not going to go through all of the organization and procedural flow of the clinic. I do have a video presentation all about the clinic. I have a few cards on one of those tables, or there's a website, St. Sampson Clinic, stsampsonclinic.com. If you go there, there's a links tab, and then you can see the video presentation, more about the clinic and more data about the clinic. What I'm going to talk about today is how that I was inspired to help start St. Sampson Medical Clinic, the influence that the clinic has had both on the parish as well on the community, and lastly, what the best part of this whole experience has been for me. So, almost exactly 6 years to the day, June 27th, 2010, Father Gregory was giving his sermon, and he told the story about St. Sampson the Hospitable. St. Sampson was a physician many, many years ago who cared for the poor, and the emperor at the time, Justinian, became ill, and nobody could help him. And finally somebody said, "Why don't you give the Sampson guy a crack at it?" St. Sampson came up, he healed him, and the grateful emperor said, "I'll give you whatever you want." And St. Sampson requested a hospital for the poor, and that's how he finished his life in caring for them. At that time in 2010, was on the board of a local chapter of the Lupus Foundation. I'd been on that board for a couple of years, and they had been trying to get me to do a traveling rheumatology clinic. I'm a board-certified rheumatologist with Vanderbilt. And I said, no, it really is not going to work that way because I need to be in one place and have the patients come to me. I have to see them multiple times. As Father Gregory finished his homily, he said, you don't have to try and change the whole world. You just do your little part. Well, when he said that, some small rusty cogs started turning, and the idea came up, like, what if we had the clinic, a rheumatology clinic in the church? So that was June of 2010. A lot of things happened. In February of 2012, we saw our first patient at St. Sampson Medical Clinic at our church. Since then, so we've been seeing patients for almost 4.5 years. We've seen over 450 patients. We've had almost 1,200 patient visits. So as far as the influence of the clinic on our parish, on the community, on our parish, understand this was very new. Nobody had ever done anything like this before, so there was reservations and concerns about having sick people come into the parish, people that are uninsured. So that led to discussions and presentations. Ultimately, we received the blessing from His Eminence, Metropolitan Nicholas. We had a unanimous positive vote from the Parish Council and a unanimous positive vote from the Parish Assembly. Since then, as the clinic started and grew and became successful and none of those fears were realized, a lot of parishioners have been involved. We've had a volunteer coordinator from the very beginning, nurses, administrative staff taking in referrals, checking people in. We have a group of ladies who cook for the volunteers. We have a board, include legal and accounting expertise. We have a great IT volunteer. Philopticos, both the local Philopticos as well as the Metropolis Philopticos have made donations. Our local Philopticos also bakes cookies for the patients in December. HEPA's made donations. We've had various parishioners who have contributed both monetary donations as well as in-kind donations. To be honest, I can't remember the exact last clinic when I saw somebody that spoke English well enough that didn't need a translator. So fortunately, we had people I didn't even know that spoke Spanish in particular to help us treat people. I put up here providers kind of as a transition. My vision for the clinic was one provider to work in the clinic. For the last couple years, we've had 3, although I'm the only one that's Orthodox. Now, one thing that may not be obvious to you is not only the benefit that we provide to the patients, but to the referring clinics. The referring primary care clinics will see these patients with horrible or debilitating arthritis. They know that there's treatments for them to do, but yet they can't treat them. So in providing our service, we not only treat the patients, we also really provide a great service for the referring clinics. A question that is asked is, why did you insist that the clinic had to be at the church? And the reason is because if we'd had the clinic anywhere else, why would they assume it was Greek Orthodox? By having the clinic at the church, everyone in the community is forced to acknowledge that our parish is engaged in physically helping people and meeting their needs. When we first started out, we notified 3 primary care clinics in Nashville that we were going to start this clinic. To date, we've seen patients from 33 counties in Tennessee. We've seen several patients from Kentucky and 1 patient from Mississippi. We've never advertised. That's all word of mouth. I can tell you that a really good day for me was about a year ago. I got a referring note from a primary care physician about an hour from here. And the note just simply said, refer to the rheumatology clinic at the Greek Orthodox Church. I also want to now talk to you about our patients. Our patients are all uninsured. And from the very beginning, we provided patients comment cards so that they could handwrite some notes, and then they could put their initials and put the date. So I have over 60 of them at home, but I brought a couple in here. This one says, my first visit, I could barely walk. Dr. Gore put me on Humira and also helped me get on disability. I'm nearly off my cane. It's been a huge turnaround in my quality of life. I'll tell you honestly that when I first saw this patient, my first thought was, God, why did you bring them here? Why did you bring him here? There's nothing I can do for him. I knew the diagnosis within about 2 seconds. He had a condition called ankylosing spondylitis. It causes fusion of the spine. Now, I had seen patients before who had their neck fused, where they couldn't turn their neck. I had never seen a patient before where his spine, he couldn't extend his spine more than 90 degrees. So he had to walk completely bent over with a cane way out here. He's in his early 40s. He'd been like this for years. So when I saw him, I talked to him and said, why aren't you on disability? And he said, well, I heard that it's hard to get it. And I'm like, trust me, let a judge take a look. You're not going to have a problem. And then I said, you know what? I don't know if I can help you or not. There's a medicine that you need to be put on. This medicine costs about $30,000. You're not going to pay a penny for it. We'll get you the medicine for free. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just try it and see. He wrote this note in April. That was about 5 months when I first saw him. When I saw him, he was almost completely erect. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And he said, you know, I could walk around my house without a cane. I don't need it at all now. Hadn't been able to do that for years. This next comment says, Dr. Gore, thank you for changing my life. God bless you. I wouldn't be too critical of her English. That's not her native language. She's Hispanic. When she first came in, she came in with the wheelchair, and she couldn't move her hands. When I saw her a month ago, or less than a month ago, she walked on her own. She could use her hands. She was well enough to write a note. This one is an Albanian yaya, and actually up until yesterday, I didn't know what that first line meant. Through a series of circumstances, Deaconess Alexandria, who's a missionary in Albania, translated it for me. And it said, thank you for the clinic, thank you for the miracle. And then the next was written by our daughter, which says, we thank you so much, you guys are so wonderful. So this is an Albanian yaya who speaks basically no English. She's over here living with her daughter and her daughter's family. And her arthritis had gotten so bad, she couldn't stand very long. She couldn't use a spoon. She couldn't hold a skillet. So you have a yaya over here with her family and she can't cook. So how bad is that? She also gets on one of these medicines, $25,000, $30,000 a year. She gets on the medicines. She can use her hands. Now every time I see her, I get a plate of baklava. This last comment card says, this clinic has restored my hope for a healthy life. Thank you to all that made this possible. This gentleman was, when I saw him, was in his probably mid-30s, and he had psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. He's married, he had 2 kids, and he had a positive test come up, and then he was told, you can't be on this medicine anymore. So he got off the medicine. Well, the psoriasis covered about 70% of his body, and then his arthritis was so bad, he couldn't use his shoulder, he couldn't use his arm, he couldn't play with his kids, he couldn't work. And when I saw him, I said, well, you can still take the medicine. You have to take something else with it, but you can get back on it. So he got back on the medicine, and this was in 2014. Quite frankly, now he has insurance, and he doesn't need to come back to the clinic anymore. You know, you could ask, so what's been the best part of this whole experience for me? Is it helping to start a first Greek Orthodox medical clinic in North America? No, that's pretty good, but no, that's not it. Is it helping to make people walk? Helping people to use their hands so they can care for their children and and do their job and do their work? No, that's great, but that's not it. If you remember in the beginning where I said that the clinic started in 2010, and then stuff happened, and then it opened up in 2012, well, I faced in that time to get the clinic ready, there were challenges and problems that came up, organizational problems, structural problems, and quite frankly, I tried as hard as I could, I thought as hard as I could, and I couldn't come up with a solution. There were problems that I couldn't solve. And when you can't solve something and you come to the end of the rope, the only thing you have left to do is pray. My prayers were not lengthy, they were not eloquent, they were desperate. The vision in my mind was, I was a little boy, and I had a couple fish sticks and a package of crackers, and I'm looking at 5,000 hungry men. And I'm saying to Christ, you know, I can't do this, and I think you want this to happen, but you're going to have to do this. And quite frankly, you're going to have to basically make something out of nothing. And not to be pushy, but it's going to need to be pretty quick. And he did it. And he did it again, and he did it again, and he did it again, and he's still doing that. Every time that happened, my faith, which admittingly was very small, every time that happened, my faith has grown and grown and grown. And I can't think of another way that that could have benefited me. You don't have to go out and try to change the world in one big swoop. Just do your little part. Just do something that you can do for Christ. Because there's a great chasm between doing something and doing nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gore, for that tremendous presentation. Now we're going to invite the very Reverend Father Constantine Morales, who's going to speak to us about the Annunciation Senior Center. Thank you very much, Father.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Bunch of weaklings. I know that it's after lunch, and I know that you're tired, and usually after that you have that little bit of a settlement. I know that we're Greek and like to have a siesta about this time. But there's a number of things that we need to talk about and to address and to really seriously think about. And as you were hearing from the presenters that are here, we're talking about various ministries that have affected our lives maybe personally, or we have heard about various things that are happening within the life of the church that we are hearing that there is a definite need. And I like the word that is being used today of creative ministry, and that is what we were talking about, but it's more so to the fact of just ministering to the people and to the needs of the people that are entrusted to the church. So I'm offering you a talk about the Senior Center, the Annunciation Senior Center that is centered at our cathedral. It was founded in May of 2010, and there was a definite need for something like this in my own life. I cared for my parents for the last 15 years of their life. My father suffered a massive stroke and had a hip replacement prior to that, and from that hip replacement, suffered a staph infection which resulted in amputating his leg up to his hip, and did not qualify for any type of any other things to help him walk, and was just resigned to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And so that was 15 years of our life. My mother was the chief caregiver for him. I was still in seminary, flying back and forth from school at the time. And the last 5 years of that portion of life, my mother had Alzheimer's, and that is a very common thing that happens when you have a caregiver that is intently taking care of somebody. Studies show that when you're taking care of somebody with Alzheimer's, if you don't take a break from what you're doing as a caregiver, there is a high potential that you will develop that disease too. It's not proven yet to be hereditary by some studies. Other studies say that it is. But there is serious study, and it is proven study, that if you are a caregiver that does not take a break, This is something that could happen in your household. And I can't say for my mother by not taking a break, this is something that happened to her, but it's something that happened in our family. And for those 15 years of my own life and the last 5 years of that portion of my parents' lives, I lost both of them within a matter of months in 2010, there was a definite need for them to go during the day somewhere. So in my own search for a senior day center, a daycare center, I found nothing that, of course, would fit the bill that I was looking for. Does that sound familiar to you when you're looking for a school? Does that sound familiar when you're looking for a daycare for your child? You don't find anything that really fits your own bill. So for myself, I met with 30 other families from our parish that were in the same circumstance that I was in. And little by little from that 30, there were 10 that stepped forward that said, yes, we believe in a program like this. And those 10 families stepped forward, and from there we began working and partnering up first with a nursing home program. And that nursing home had asked us to meet off-site, and we were about a half an hour away from the cathedral. And so every week I would go down to the senior center, and from there we would have either a liturgy, if it was a weekday liturgy called for, or another activity that was taking place. But as time would progress, that senior center, because it was open to the public, our people had a segregated space. But what we were noticing was other people wanted to be part of that. And then what was happening was that our people were not comfortable being with so many others. When you're dealing with somebody with dementia, too much change can be very dangerous. So we heard the cry of our people that said, we want to move this down to the cathedral. And with the agreement of the nursing home, because there were more people that were going there, we had pulled out and we moved everything down to our Annunciation Cathedral. Across the street from the cathedral, we have the Annunciation Orthodox Center. And the lower level of that, there's a library, there's a Golden Age room, and there are other, with a full kitchen and other things in which we're able to set up things. Before we moved in, though, and before we were able to use that, we had to set it up, though, for our seniors. We don't accept anybody who's unable to go to the restroom by themselves. They have to be ambulatory, which is the technical term. We do take people in wheelchairs, but there are people that are able to use the wheelchair and do those things. They have to be able to feed themselves and these other things. And if they're on medication, we need just to remind them to take that medication. We cannot distribute it. The state of Maryland does not require us to be a licensed senior center, but we do also fit the bill for the health department. So our senior center, when we moved down to the cathedral, there were a number of other things that needed to happen. So we started off with the 2 people that said they wanted to come to the cathedral. For a matter of 2 weeks, we had 2 people at our senior center every day. And as word would be getting out, more and more people started to come. We are now up to 25 people. We really can take a couple more, but not too many more, because we want to be able to give as much attention to everybody as much as we can. At the senior center, we have one person who serves as the director, one person who serves as the coordinator, one person who serves as the activity director, one person who serves as the cook, in one person. She's actually being Skyped in right now. But we also have a band of volunteers that come forward to take care of a number of other things, and they take care of the meals for us, they take care of other things. We have a number of drivers, and we moved down to our senior center. One of our groups had donated a bus for us to use. The bus was great to have, very, very dated. It was an old luggage bus that they would use from Hertz Rent-A-Car, one of these other places. And in fact, the seniors, when we put them inside of there, it was so squeaky and loud that even the one with the hardest of hearing could hear everything. And they would tell us, they would say, "Father, you got to put bricks in the back of that bus. It is so bumpy." So we met again, and we decided with creative thinking as to where we are right now as to what we need to do. So we couldn't afford to buy a new bus at that time, and people were still kind of grasping onto the idea of this type of ministry, so we bought an old limousine from a funeral home. And we would use that to pick up our people. When you are in circumstances like we are in, so when you buy a new car, what's the first thing you do? Aside from perhaps blessing it or throwing quarters inside, because we did all of that, you take it for a ride. So the first day that we had the limousine, I was the driver. And we packed everybody inside a limousine, and somebody got in the back seat and said, "This Kleenex dispenser is a nice feature." So we packed it and we started going, and one of our participants, whom we just lost a month ago, said to me, "Father, you're going to cause an accident. If you're driving, they're going to wonder who's back here." And I think about, in a mind like this, that they're thinking even more progressive as to what's going on. When we moved down to the cathedral, it was important for us and for them because they were able to see the church every day. When we have weekday liturgies, those are our chanters because they don't forget that. They have total recollection about the hymns of the church. They remember the prayers. And in fact, if I am saying a petition to catch my breath, they are continuing along in prayer too. These are amazing things that take place in the life of our community. As time would progress, more and more people have embraced this idea of a senior center. And we don't just serve those with Alzheimer's, we serve all of our parishioners. We have another person who has macular degeneration that is unable to see. And if you can imagine what that is like, because now this individual is losing her hearing, and just to be able to sit at home and look at four walls with just shadows at this point. Every minute is filled with activity, almost to the point that we are open from 9 to 3, that at 5 minutes to 3, they are almost screaming, "Uncle, please take us home, we're tired." For my mother, I couldn't take her to the center. It opened, and then she died shortly after that. But I took her to another center prior to our center opening. Those days were the best days for her because she came home exhausted. We were not suffering or dealing with sundowners. We weren't dealing with not eating. We weren't dealing with all of these other things. And by me sending my mother to this other center, it was able for me to learn something. That is, that personal relationship that takes place. These people are still of value. My mother at this center wore a name tag. And when we opened, I said, we will not do that. Immediately when a person walks in, we have to learn their name, and they will learn ours. We are not the type of center we just have a ham sandwich for lunch. We do our best to follow the Mediterranean diet as much as we can. We were told that seniors, if they don't want to eat something, just make them a peanut butter sandwich. So we've been open now from 2010 to today. The same jar of peanut butter is still sitting in the cabinet unopened. We became recognized and noticed by Johns Hopkins Hospital in the elder care. Dr. Konstantin Liketsos, who's one of our greatest supporters. He is the premier doctor of Alzheimer's in the United States, and he has been the one that received a tremendous amount of support, gaining knowledge in the works of how to deal with a person who has lost their memory but not their identity, and most other things in recent history. Memories from the past, one could relive every moment. But through the intercessions and the prayers of our people, we continue to serve these beloved faithful. In 2012, we received the Trailblazer Award from Johns Hopkins Memory Center as being recognized as the only faith-based senior center in Baltimore City and blazing the trails for our seniors. As of now, we are the only senior center in our archdiocese and perhaps in the Orthodox Church here in America. Our seniors attend services, whether it's Orthros and the Divine Liturgy and even the variable services. And as I said, they remember the sacred hymns and the realization to be there for corporal worship. I know for myself, I couldn't get my parents ready on Sunday mornings for obvious reasons. My sister would help. And there were days where it's just too difficult. And a lot of our senior families fall into the same circumstance and predicament as well. But these seniors need to be in church, and they need to be part of things, and they continue to do that by coming and worshiping together. Our seniors look forward to coming to the center, but the first day that they attend, it is similar to when a parent drops off a child at daycare or school. There is apprehension, they're nervous. I don't need to go there is what they say. I don't want to go there. Why does Father Dean want to see me? All these other different things kind of go through their minds. But when they see the church in the background and they are called by their name and they sit down together and they share in memories and being reunited with friends that they have not seen in years, that nervousness ends. Our days begin with prayer and meals, and then there's discussion with current events. But we do current events within reason. We can't talk to the seniors about various events that are taking place in the life of the world because some of them have lived through that. And these are things that we don't want to dredge back up. We very carefully talk about politics. We very genuinely talk about the church. And of course, we exercise within reason. They are not running around 2 city blocks. But what they are doing is very simple exercises, whether it's of the mind, whether it's of the body, but are doing very easy and simple exercise to keep their minds going. Lunch, if it's not liturgy, lunch is the event of the day. And they share in a meal together in discussion, and we engage in that discussion. No one likes to eat alone. It's not enjoyable. And I would get frustrated when I would see my mother at the other senior center because she had nothing in common with anybody else, and they sat her at a table by herself, and that was the most heartbreaking thing I had to see my mother go through. And for that, about a day later, we kind of pulled her out, and we started looking for other things, and unfortunately, life took its course. But when they would sit together in meals, they recollect various things that took place in their lives, and they share in different memories about the church. They talk about past priests in a very good way, and they talk about others as well, with all these beautiful things that are taking place. They love music. It's interesting because I've noticed now over these last 6 years that we've been established, the music is changing. I'm not saying they're listening to rock and roll or anything like that, but if we were at a senior center 10 years ago, they would be listening of music from the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, and that's about where we are right now, is listening to music from the 1940s. That's about where their memory span is. They also enjoy Greek music. And those that can dance are not shy about doing it and grabbing whoever is sitting down and to engage everybody. That is something that is very important for these seniors because it speaks about it also in an amount of studies about the importance of music and physical activity. We also do arts and crafts, and then we have chores that we do. They still want to feel needed and feel valued. So they are stuffing bulletins, they are folding newsletters. During Holy Week, they are the ones that are pulling the leaves for bay leaves. They are the ones that are doing other things that are very simple. They are also the ones who are the biggest supporters, and those who are able to walk are the ones that are there to really be the ambassadors for the senior center. We have currently, as I told you, we have one director who really encompasses everything. 6 volunteers, 4 drivers. It really is a one-of-a-kind ministry to the church. We do charge a fee. It is $25 per person, and then we charge $20 for round-trip transportation. We don't turn people away. If there's somebody that cannot afford to go, our philopticos and other private people come forward to really support this ministry and to really make it something that is very valuable to them. If you focus right now on the slides, there are a few things that I want to show you about our senior center. They love visitors. And we had a visit of Archbishop Demetrius. He was in Baltimore. And so I'd asked the Archbishop if he would come just for a few moments, just to come and spend a moment with our seniors. And he stayed for an hour and a half and spoke to everyone. And in fact, the amazing thing, there was one gentleman who was there, and the Archbishop had asked him, "Where were you born?" And he said, "France." And the Archbishop began conversing a little bit in French with this gentleman. He spoke to everybody and really made it a point to get to know and to be very excited about this ministry that is taking place in the life of the church. The young lady who is sitting next to the Archbishop is our director of the center, Mrs. Pat Bartsokis. That is our new bus, and that's the background of our cathedral. And so this is not the best of fundraising things, and I know that we're going to talk about stewardship shortly. We were able to pay cash for that bus, and that is a 2014. We bought it last year, and it had 5,000 miles on it. And I did something, and if I could use the word unorthodox, I will. I guilted our people, and I sent out some text messages that said, I sponsored for an amount of money, can you match it? And just about everybody did. Don't know why. And that was the first day that we went for a ride with the new bus, and we went down to the Inner Harbor that day and just to go for a walk around. They enjoy going on excursions everywhere. There was one day that I took our seniors for a picnic, and it was a bag lunch, and we went down to that same spot where they have a number of picnic tables, and the vista there looks over the harbor and part of Fort McHenry and some other things that are taking place. And they didn't eat their lunch. They decided they would rather feed the ducks than eat their lunch. So that is not me driving. I didn't do a selfie driving, but this is them in the car as we're on our way somewhere. And again, they love to go out to eat, and they enjoy that conversation that takes place. There are days that Andreas, who is my pastoral assistant, and I take them out. Andreas will come over and chant some of the hymns of the church, or chant some of these, or sing some of the older Greek songs for them, and that brings back a tremendous amount of memories for them. And we enjoy that camaraderie together. There are a number of people that come from, aside from our parish at the cathedral, that come from the neighboring parishes that are part of this ministry as well. And these are our seniors that are busy, well, they were busy stuffing the Easter, the Pascha mailing in order to go out for that. And then here we are at one of the great senior dinners that we're having. And then they, again, love visitors. This is from 2 weeks ago. The priest on the left-hand side of our director is Father Chris Flasoris. The priest on the right is Father Luke Palumbus. Father Luke is 6'8". So Pat is not 6'2". She is standing on a stool. I'm not going to say her exact height because she is being Skyped in right now. And again, I conclude with this picture of our seniors. Thank you very, very much on behalf of the Annunciation Senior Center.
Thank you, Father Dean. That was a wonderful presentation about a unique and extraordinary ministry. Now I would like to invite up Father Mark Munoz and John Mangoris from Rochester, Minnesota, who will be talking about taking the unique and extraordinary step out into reaching Christ through the waves and the wind, through the virtue and the wonderful practice of philoxenia.
Christ is in our midst.
He is in all these shelves.
My brother Clergy, I ask for your blessings. Ladies and gentlemen, for your prayers. I have been asked today to share a true story with you. And unlike some true stories, this true story actually occurred. Imagine that. It was a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, 2009. It was hot. I was on my deck grilling. My iPhone went off. I looked down on the caller ID and it said Metropolis of Chicago. I did what any sensible person would do, double click on that, send it to voicemail. 20 seconds later, my phone rang again, Metropolis of Chicago. I answered the phone. It was our chancellor. I said, Father Mark, what are you doing? I said, Your Grace, I'm grilling. You're interrupting a family holiday vacation. Go inside and sit down. My life will never be the same from that moment on. He asked me, essentially, a very long discussion short, if I would come to pastor our parish of Holy Inargris Cosmas and Damianos in Rochester, Minnesota, to which I immediately said, no, thank you. All I could think of was the movie Fargo and the accent in the winter. Not going, no way, no how. He called the next day, same spiel, I'm not going. He called a third time. After the third time, I realized something is going on beyond me. I need to stop, take a break, do what any responsible Orthodox Christian would do. I sent a very long message to my spiritual father, about 4 pages long email, all the justifications and reasons why I should not accept this position. I got a response within 90 seconds, one sentence, you will be obedient to the bishop. Done deal. Called His Grace back, said, we will go. He said, great, you start in 3 weeks. This was in 2009 when the housing bubble burst. We had to sell our home and buy a new one in 3 weeks, move my wife and our 3 young children up the interstate from Chicago to Minnesota. All of these road obstacles that I had imagined disappeared and dissipated. 3 weeks later, we found ourselves in Rochester, Minnesota, signing a mortgage, going in debt big time to be homeowners and to parish and to pastor this parish. Our then 5-year-old daughter, who's normally very energetic, definitely takes after her father in a spasmodic kind of way at times. We noticed something wasn't quite right with her. She was 5 years old, getting ready to enter kindergarten. She had some immunizations that were due. We took her to the local hospital. You perhaps have heard of it, Mayo Clinic, for her pediatric follow-up. There's a nice shot of a building we're very familiar with. We took her in. The first thing the pediatrician said, "Honey, your color doesn't look very good. With Mom and Dad's approval, we're going to take some blood tests." Of course, we agreed. 1 month after our arrival in Rochester, Minnesota, our church is 2 blocks away from the Mayo Clinic, literally, our daughter was diagnosed with cancer. She was diagnosed with leukemia. Now, you can imagine what that does to a father and to a mother. You can imagine the thoughts that went through our hearts and our minds. One of them was the following: we did not come to this city out of the blue without expecting any kind of challenge or difficulty. And we knew that we were not sent to this parish and to this assignment for our daughter to die. That was 7 years ago. Nina today is 12 years old, going on 21. Notwithstanding Minnesota winters, which are everything you can imagine there to be, there's our church, by the way, I remember telling my wife, I don't necessarily want to go to Rochester because I know they have this philoxenia house. And I remember uttering these exact words: I have no point of reference. People who come to Mayo Clinic don't have pneumonia. They're not going to have their hip replaced. They're coming with serious, life-threatening diagnoses. And I told my wife, I have no point of reference. How am I going to help these people? God, in his infinite providence and mercy, not only saved my daughter's life, he saved and enhanced my priesthood. Every day when I would take the 2-second walk from my office to the philoxenia house, greeting a new family that may be from Greece, may be from Ukraine, maybe from Russia, Albania, I introduce myself. Hopefully I can speak a language that they speak. If not, we work it out. And I take my phone and I flip it open and I show them a picture of a beautiful little girl with her bald head. And they look at that picture, and of course, recognition comes to their face, to their eyes. And immediately I explain to them, this isn't just some random child who perhaps stayed at the philoxenia house, or perhaps I met in my rounds at Mayo Clinic. This is my daughter. The pain, the fears, everything that you can imagine in your life, looking into those eyes. I'm sorry. If we could please rise, His Eminence is joining us along with 2 other metropolitans. Your Eminences, thank you for gracing us with your presence. We ask for your blessing as well. As I was saying, when I visit the philoxenia house now and show them the picture of my daughter, there is an immediate recollection, there's an immediate approachment, there's an immediate binding of 2 strangers that only the word philotimon, philoxenia can describe. We share something in common, even though we may not know each other's names or know each other's language or culture or history. The specific circumstances that brought me to Rochester, Minnesota, the specific circumstances that brought them to Rochester, Minnesota, are the same in so many ways. The story has a happy ending, thank God. There's not a day that goes by that I don't thank him for that happy ending. That's not always the case. Unfortunately, individuals have come to us, have not received the same good news that my family was blessed to receive, and have passed away, have gone into the eternal kingdom of God. And our presence with the priest, the local priest, with the volunteers at the Philoxenia House, literally around their deathbed, loving them, comforting them and their families, and of course helping and assisting them to take their loved one, in one case, back to the island of Kalimnos to be buried. It's an incredible ministry, a unique ministry, wherein we are in a specific geographical region, we understand the local ministry, and all we did was have the idea, how can we help? What can we do as Orthodox Christians to bring the loving healing of Christ, not just to our own? The Philoxenia House is not just for Orthodox Christians. It's open to any individual who comes to Mayo Clinic for medical assistance and for healing. I'm going to turn it over now to my partner in crime, Archon Johnny Manguras, who's going to give a few more details regarding the Philoxenia House Ministry. Please keep us and our volunteers in your prayers.
Dynamic ministries. That's a word that you don't hear in a circumstance like our own with the Philoxenia House. Making this a dynamic ministry was not an easy task for us. Having homes for people that are coming with severe sicknesses, thousands and thousands of miles away from their homes, what could we do as a ministry to make it dynamic? Our very first one, we got the support of a parish that brought their youth to our homes. When they brought those youth to the homes, we now presented a positive and dynamic ministry for the children that were visiting these homes and for the patients that were in these homes. Some of them have built bonds together that still speak today. One of those children from St. Haralambos in Illinois got his first job 7 years after he had come visit the home and wrote his first paycheck, wrote us a check to continue those ministries. That's dynamic. What else can make a dynamic ministry? A ministry that can allow people in their darkest times to still have their faith, regardless of which faith they have, to have hope, and to be able to react in a sickness like they would in their own homes, which is what we created. Here's an example of what happens to our visitors that come to these homes. Day one, despair, uneasiness, fear. Those are the three major things that we see. They come into our homes white. No reflection to their face, no tone. Fear has dominated them. They see the location of these homes right next to Holy and Agony Greek Orthodox Church. They see that it's 2 blocks away from the hospital. Day two, they wake up in the morning. We see them outside, sometimes drinking kafedaki on the front porch, sometimes, as the ones that have come from Europe, eating baklava at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is the Greek's version of a French delicacy, and starting to tidy up their home. Their home. Day three, my favorite day, we get invited into the homes to have meals with these families. I teased Father Mark, I said before these ministries started, I was able to keep my physique kind of in check being Greek, but once those homes started opening up and they started inviting us in, is when we saw that they took these homes as their own. Some of them stayed for weeks, some stayed for years as they were battling diseases. Dynamic ministries, I'm going to keep using that term. Getting the youth engaged in a ministry that has sorrow and sadness and turning it into a positive is immense. St. Haralambos started something for us that has continued on and we hope continues on. They have brought their youth into an area and shown them actual life lessons. Here is what we need your support for. Raise these monies for this and then come to the homes and look at what we've accomplished. We as a body across the country. We have received checks from every angle you can think of in America, from Canada to Greece. A perfect example of this is I was traveling with my family back to where I grew up, grew up in the Seattle, Washington area, and I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, actually Powell River, British Columbia, which is, my dad would joke, the last spot before it's Alaska. So that's where we were from. I'm in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia, and someone taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Are you Johnny Mangoris?" And I was like, "Yes, I am. Will you please take this?" They handed me a check. My brother stayed at the Philoxenia house, and I recognized you. 2,300 miles away in a different country. So, dynamic ministries. These youth that come see what they're raising funds for. They come into these homes. Holy Apostles Church in Illinois has been doing a 5K run for us and supporting us, and their parishioners, some have come out to see the homes, which is great. Some of them never will. Because of them, something came to me, and it's a quote that I've been using for quite a long time. Helping those that we know, love, and see is customary. Your brother is sick, your sister is sick, your children, you're going to do everything you can for them. Those that you will never know, love, or see, giving in those circumstances is extraordinary. We have had some extraordinary people across the country. I saw a quote today that is very fitting in what our ministry is. It says, "The distance between dreams and reality is action." So within your own parishes, whether you start a dynamic ministry or want to support a dynamic ministry, don't settle and procrastinate. Take action. Make the dreams of your parish the dreams of all the other parishes around you, and make them dynamic ministries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Father Mark and John, for that wonderful presentation. Your Eminence, Archbishop Demetrios, Your Eminences, we've been having a presentation on the ministry forums of unique and extraordinary ministries. We've heard about the St. Samson Clinic from Dr. Gore. We've heard about the Annunciation Senior Home with Father Dean Morales. And now we're going to hear, we also heard, of course, just now about the Philoxenia House. Now we're going to hear from Liz Deligianis, who will be talking about the Pastoral Care Ministry that is hosted at St. Catherine's Greek Orthodox Church in Greenwood Village, Colorado.
Your Eminence, Your Eminences, Reverend Fathers, fellow delegates, I'm honored to be here with you this afternoon. I'm from St. Catherine's Parish in Greenwood Village, Colorado, and what I'd like to talk to you about today is some of the ministry work that we're doing. And we have right now 8 primary ministries at St. Catherine, and underneath those 8 primary ministries, we have approximately 32 sub-ministries. The one I want to focus on today is our pastoral care ministry and share some of the work that we've done with that and some of the things that we feel makes it unique. So I'm going to start off with the mission of our pastoral care ministry. The mission of our pastoral care ministry is to assist the clergy with the pastoral needs of the parish by being instruments of the healing, transforming presence of the living Christ in the lives of the people within our parish and beyond. In this way, we strive to fulfill as individuals and as a community the gospel and the commandments of our Lord Jesus Christ to love one another and to be the light of the world. With that said, the pastoral care ministry, as with the other 8 primary ministries, has sub-ministries. So I'm briefly going to share some information about those sub-ministries. The first one is Meal Angels, and you may have heard about that one before, but Meal Angels is a ministry that enables us to provide meals on a temporary basis to parishioners in need. It may be because of a birth of a new child, it may be somebody going through treatment for an illness, it may be a parishioner who's just grieving, and the last thing they want to think about is what should they eat tonight. Our care line Our care line is a ministry that enables the church and our clergy to alert the parish to somebody that is in need of prayer or going through an illness, in need of compassion or empathy. Parishioners' names will go on the care line, which is published in our bulletins, only with their permission. And that encourages our fellow parishioners to pray for them, to be aware of that something might be going on, to reach out to them, to offer compassion or assistance. Now, our care line works closely with our prayer partners. Our prayer partners are a group of Laity volunteers who have committed to pray for parishioners whose names, or others whose names are on our care line on a regular basis. In addition to that, they will also, we have some parishioners who may not want their prayer requests published. They want to keep them private. So the prayer partners are aware of that. It's very confidential, and they also pray for those individuals as well. Next one is our Cancer Prayer and Support Group. And this is probably the only ministry that we pray will not grow for obvious reasons, but it happens. This group was formed about 4 years ago. Again, these are parishioners who are either cancer patients, cancer survivors, and their caregivers. And it is a prayer and support group. They meet regularly, they pray together, they're able to share their fears, their anxieties, their victories, their experiences. And they're also, by being together, they're spiritually bound, and they also are prepared should we have somebody else that needs us. I just admitted I'm part of it. Should we have somebody else that needs them, they'll be available to help any newcomers if necessary. The next ministry is our Compassionate Care Ministry. Although in theory this is not a new ministry, the approach that we've taken with this particular ministry is new. Compassionate Care is a visitation ministry, and the purpose of it is to complement the vocation of our clergy and to help with visits to people that are hospitalized, people that are unable to leave their homes. You may know of them as shut-ins. We just chose to try not to use that word. They may be in assisted living facilities and hospitals, or they may just be going through a very difficult time, and maybe they're grieving, and they're in need of compassion, a connection to their parish community, empathy. And with this program, when we looked, although we were doing it, of course, we had parishioners that were visiting others in need. It wasn't maybe formalized or structured. So when we looked at this, we said to ourselves, how do we build a ministry? How do we model a ministry for success? You know, what characteristics will ensure that this ministry will be successful? And first, so some of the things we did, and that I'll share with you as well. So modeling ministries for success, starting with this Compassionate Care ministry, is the first and foremost to match God-given personal gifts with ministry needs. And it's easy to have volunteers that say, I'll do it, but volunteering doesn't always equate to success. Looking at people's God-given gifts versus what the ministry needs is a very, very important integral part of a successful ministry. The ministry needs to be sustainable. You know, it can't be back of the envelope, so-and-so is going to volunteer and so-and-so is going to take care of this. So we sat back and said, how do we make sure that this ministry is sustainable? How do we make sure that as the leadership turns over, as the volunteers turn over, that this ministry will live on? So with that said, as dry as it may sound, we put together an operating manual. So how the ministry should operate was documented and can be used by others. It can also be improved upon in the future, but it's a point of reference for anybody that steps in to lead the ministry in the future. One person cannot do it all and does not need to know it all. People get crowned ministry leaders, and then the great expectation of doing it all tends to fall on their shoulders. Involving other parishioners and laity and in the ministry is absolutely critical. And one thing that we found that was very, very helpful is we had a ministry leader but we actually tapped a few fellow parishioners on the shoulder based on their God-given gifts and the ministry need, and had an advisory team. And they were able to offer their expertise, and it helped the ministry leader feel like everything wasn't sitting on her shoulders. And it worked very, very well. Properly training volunteers is absolutely critical. Our parish went through the Natural Church Development Program a few years ago, and this is one of the things that just was blaring at us, that making sure that volunteers are trained. You know, again, you don't want to set somebody up to fail. You want to set them up for success. So particularly with our compassionate care ministry, we have a training program. And whether you're a parishioner with our parish for 40 years, 30 years, or you're a parishioner for 4 weeks, you are required to go through the 3-hour training. It just puts everybody on the same foundation. It gives them the same tools. And so it is a requirement. Keep clergy informed with regular summaries. As you all know, our clergy are pulled in many, many different directions. It's very, very difficult for them to stay abreast without, we don't want them to have to reach out to 15 different people to find out what's going on. They can if they want. So with this particular ministry, we're streamlining the way that we flow up the information about the ministry. So the volunteers will do a very short summation on a monthly basis. It's made very easy for them. It will go to the ministry leader. The ministry leader will just compile a summation, one page maybe, and send it to clergy on a monthly basis. During the training, volunteers are trained on when do you alert clergy, because in a visitation ministry you may come across something that they need to be alerted to. That's part of the training. But we want to try to make it a little easier on our clergy and just give them a summation, and of course if they need more information, we'll provide it. Volunteer meetings should be regular and purposeful. Everybody is busy. We live in a world of texting and emails and phone calls. People work. So if you really want to engage your laity in your ministries, which is absolutely, I think, critical, you have to be very, very cognizant of their time. So if you're going to meet with your volunteers, make sure it's purposeful. When they're there in the meeting, make sure you accomplish what you set out to accomplish. Avoid tangents. Have an agenda. Give them time to speak. But try to stick to the time frame. That will encourage them to know that you really do respect their time. And hopefully next time you meet, they'll say, oh, this so-and-so can run this meeting well, I'll go. Be sensitive to volunteers' busy schedules, which I just said. Clearly outlining expected time commitments. One of the things I think that makes our pastoral care ministry attractive is that our volunteers don't really have to spend more than an hour and a half a month in any one of the sub-ministries to make a difference. And we clearly outline that up front. So if they're going to commit to, say, the Compassionate Care Ministry or Meal Angels, an hour a month. So if you say to somebody, do you have an hour? Do you have an hour and a half a month? Yeah, I can manage that. They know up front. If they choose to volunteer more and commit more, that's up to their discretion. But outline the minimal time commitments that's expected of them, and I think people will tend to be more receptive. Constant volunteer recruitment is necessary. The best problem you can have is to have too many volunteers. You actually want to seek that problem. The worst problem you can have is not to have enough. Don't wait until your volunteer pool runs low. You almost have to constantly be marketing your ministry, go out and engage volunteers, and you may say, well, I won't have nothing for them to do. There was always something for them to do. You may have to get creative, but don't let your pool run low, because then it goes back to the fact that your ministry may not be sustainable if you let that happen. Ministry leaders should be empowered, committed, and engaged. That goes back to the first matching God-given personal gifts with ministry needs. Make sure that when you're asking somebody to lead a ministry, that they have the right gifts and talents. Everybody has gifts and talents, but make sure we're using them in the right place. Volunteer recognition should not be underestimated. As Christians, I know we should never seek accolades for what we do. Generally, people do volunteer from the goodness of their heart. Again, going back to the busyness and the crazy world that we live in, where everything is a text message or birthday wishes are done on Facebook instead of phone calls, instead of birthday cards, don't underestimate the power of a handwritten thank you note now and then to a volunteer or a mention in your church bulletin. It's not that people necessarily are seeking that so they could feel good about themselves, but it reinforces that what they're doing is making a difference, and I think it encourages them to want to continue to do more. And I think that's my last bullet, but I will add that no matter what we do when it comes to our ministries, it requires continuous prayer, that we will strengthen, that our ministries will grow, that we will engage more and more of the laity, and that we will continue to be the voice of Christ in this changing world. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Liz and to all of our presenters for our unique and extraordinary ministries. We'd like to open up the floor for questions that anyone may have for our forum. We ask that you come to the microphone, that you say your name and your home parish and your city clearly so that we can recognize who you are. Thank you very much. So if anyone would like to ask a question at this time, please.
Or we'll bring the microphone to you.
Well, there we go.
Just who are you? Where are you from?
My name is James Mohammed. I'm with the Annunciation out of Pensacola, Florida. This question is for Liz, because you just presented a very good program, but how do you go about encouraging your younger parishioners to volunteer?
How does that, can you hear me? Okay. A little closer. Okay, good?
Good.
James, that's a great question, and I think that's a challenge that we continually face. One thing I think that's very important is, as we look to engage our younger parishioners, email isn't going to cut it. You know, tapping them. I think we really need to reach out to them in the way that they communicate best. And the best way, I think, is for us to bring in minimally 1 or 2 younger volunteers for them to recruit. And I would say that that's where I would start. Even if you can get 1 or 2, and you're probably talking in millenniums, because most of these will require, I would say, somebody at least 21, and there's a few that don't. But I think starting off at 1 or 2 and having them become the champion for it and having them help do the recruiting, that would be my suggestion.
How does one get a Liz in your parish?
I don't know.
Hi, my name is John Demiakis, St. Catherine's Church in Falls Church, Virginia. I want to commend all of you. It's been for the wonderful presentations to see what you're doing. I'm a physician myself, cardiologist, and I've long had an interest in the history of medicine. And many of you may not know, but the Byzantine Empire and the Orthodox Church innovated some of the most wonderful things in medicine. Byzantium had a huge medical program well in advance of the Reformation. 2 great books, by the way, by Father Costandellis, Social Philanthropy in the Byzantine Empire, and more recently, Timothy Miller, Birth of the Hospital in the Byzantine Empire. Byzantium had hospitals, nursing homes, orphan homes, all those sort of things long before the West even got wind of those things. They find out about them during the Crusades when they came east. So to see this happening now is amazing to me. I've often wondered, how can we start a hospital? Dr. Gore, I'm impressed by what you've done. Hope we can do something like that. There's at least one other Orthodox clinic in Pittsburgh, started by Focus, which is a group I haven't heard of here, but they're doing some wonderful things in philanthropy. Now, in encourage us all to get involved with Focus, Fellowship of Orthodox Christians United to Serve. They're doing some fascinating things much along this line. We at our hospital, our church, we are involved in a faith-based group with several other religions in a building right next to St. Catherine. So we send doctors there, nurses, and we have about 300-400 patients, full gamut of medical care. But we involve local hospitals as well. The Coptic Church has several clinics that I'm aware of, 2 in DC and others. We should bring these groups together and learn from each other. But I do want to thank you for having this session and for one of the wonderful works the individuals are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is George. Am I? Okay. My name is George Karras from St. Sophia Church in Elgin, Illinois. And this is for gentleman, Mr. Johnny Manguras. Johnny, could you tell us how did you come up with the idea to open Philoxenia House? And when you started this, did you ever imagine that these things will be happening in your church? I mean, were you surprised? I mean, how? Would you share this with us?
Sure. The actual vision came from a priest prior to us doing it, and it had been a vision in the parish for about 15 years before. Really, ultimately, what pushed us into this is that we had raised funds to build a church, and during that time, we had been in this building project. The church decided, because one of the properties adjacent to our church property became available, and we went to His Eminence and asked if we could delay the building of the new church and start the Philoxenia mission. And in that time frame is how it kind of quickly turned around, and some parishioners stepped in and were able to donate the funds to buy the first home, and that's where it started. Ironically, pushing our church needs aside for a while and pushing the ministry to the forefront really made a big difference. And ironically, when we first approached His Eminence to ask that, we were a little nervous as a parish, thinking he would want the church being built first, but he said, no, build the ministry, get that program going, your church will come. And some amazing things have happened ever since. One of our parishioners was so moved by that he made an extremely large contribution so that we could do both relatively at the same time. But it was a long working in the process, but when it actually became a reality that it was going to happen, happened within about a 4-month period, which was quite amazing.
Hello, my name is Dimitri Yassim. I'm from St. John's Greek Orthodox Church in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the situation I wanted to ask, we did do a ministry that the young lady was talking about, I forgot your name, sorry, about doing care to homes, and we have started that within our parish for the lay people. What I'm asking also is your criteria that you had up there. I'd like to have more information on that later. And the next thing I'm going to bring out is a big difficult situation in our church also, is the problem that some people come up to us, and when they have a funeral now, they say cremation is much cheaper. So how do we get around this? Has anybody done extensively delving into this matter of cremation versus a burial? And that's why I'm asking if we can get some information on that also.
Really quick, let me just say that further information about any of these programs will be up on the Clergy Laity website. So we'll have information and how you can get more information on them. And then I will defer the rest of the question.
Father Gregory, Father Dean.
Yeah.
So the topic of cremation does come up in our parishes, and in my parish it is something that does periodically appear. We have a very good relationship with 2 of the local funeral homes. And in our own studies, it has been, we have our own cemetery, which also makes things much easier too, but in our own studies, we have seen that between the cost of cremation and the cost of traditional burial, there is not any difference really. It also depends on what the plans are for the family. If it is the family's plan to do viewings and limousines and all of those things, that is what adds to a cost factor. But if they are doing just a strict funeral that's going to take place inside of the church with that situation there, and then the burial that is taking place at the cemetery, the cost is almost dollar to dollar. And if that's really just the basis for reason for cost, then we really can't see any reason for arguing about cremation at this point. We have to have that understanding about what the Orthodox purpose is for burial, and not the cremation that is taking place and trying to be thrifty when it comes to our loved ones when they fall asleep.
Gordy Gelatis Hoke, St. Demetrius, Libertyville, Illinois. The question to Liz was concerning youth, and I would like to ask the others relative to that. Father Dean, is there a way of involving the youth in the seniors ministry? Is there a way to involve the youth in particularly aspiring medical students or younger people involved in the rheumatology clinic? For Philoxenia House, Johnny, you mentioned youth groups coming from afar. How is that integrated, or how can we get more information about providing that for a youth ministry? Yes, thank you.
Sure, I can answer for us. For the Philoxenia House, we have a booth downstairs in the exhibition hall that we can give all sorts of information and show you what some of the things that we've done in the past with the youth to help be a part of this ministry.
With our clinic, we've had, I have had an undergraduate who actually is, she's at Holy Cross, and she's pre-med, and I've had her shadow me. We've also had nursing students, a few different nursing students from Belmont University who've come through and who volunteered and helped at the clinic. We don't really per se have a program for them, but they're very interested, and so when we've had them, then we've provided opportunities.
For the senior center, our youth are very much involved. So whether it's the Goya coming down, more so for the OCF group that comes down, they both have various days in which if they want to come down, there's something that is scheduled for them to be there. Most of our volunteers are also parents or grandparents that come to spend the day, and they also bring their grandchildren. So we also consider them to be the volunteers and also to assist and to be those good ambassadors for the senior center.
And I would also just like to add to the question of youth. Don't underestimate just their witnessing these ministries taking place in the parish. Even sometimes just knowing that the clinic is happening, being aware and being present and seeing these things taking place, even if they don't have their hands directly involved, it makes a huge impression upon them, and they see by example that these are important things that we do, and it might inspire them in the future to follow that example within their own parishes, wherever they may go. There's plenty of books that have been written that show that for the youth, the church reaching out and doing this real hands-on ministry is really, really critical and very important. So I greatly appreciate your question in this regard. Thank you.
I just wanted to provide an answer relative to the burial question. There is a church, Holy Ascension OCA Church in Charleston, South Carolina. Every burial in the community is handled by the burial ministry team. One of the deacons there specializes it. That's actually a natural burial in the beautiful Orthodox tradition. So there's another example, but if you're looking for information about burials, the Holy Ascension OCA Church in Charleston, South Carolina does have that ministry going on.
Thank you, Father. Now we have another question.
Yeah, this is George Thomas from St. Demetrius, Rocky River, Ohio. For Father Constantine, I was very interested in your ministry. I was wondering if I found anecdotally, at least in our community, there seems to be a reluctance of people who whose parents and so forth are stricken by dementia, to have people see them or to admit it. There's kind of this generational stigma, if you will, it seems, at least anecdotally in our community. Did you have to overcome that, or have you had problems with that, or was there anything that you can add to or can talk to us about that situation?
So from my own perspective, I had a hard time with accepting that my mother had Alzheimer's. When I had to take the keys away from her, I had thought that that was going to be the worst day of her life. And I had said, I need the keys, Mom. I think it's time. And I said it nicer than this. I think it's time that you stop driving and everything else. And she merely just handed me the keys and said, thank you. For other people, it seems to be a struggle. That's always that last little tone of freedom for a number of our seniors. When somebody is labeled with that disease of Alzheimer's, I always considered it like the beginning of a prison sentence almost. You're trapped in your own body. And there is a stigma that goes along with that as a person with Alzheimer's, and also for the family as well. What has happened with our senior center, and we're noting a lot more, is that those who come to participate, it becomes a support group for our caregivers. And in fact, Hopkins periodically will provide a caregivers workshop for our caregivers to come down on a Saturday, and it's just for an hour and a half, because that really is the least amount of time you can leave them alone. Or we bring them down to the center and they just kind of spend that period of time with us. So I've noticed that that's been something that has eased that reluctance. Those that participate are going to be the best ones to speak on behalf of what you're trying to do. So that has alleviated a number of those things for us. But again, our senior center just doesn't serve those with Alzheimer's and dementia. It serves a number of other people, those who are widowed, those who never marry, those who just are plain alone. There's one lady that we have that comes down, and we used to call her the cat lady. She had 4 cats and lived in an 800 square foot apartment. And she said, if I did not have the senior center, I'd be looking at these 4 cats and these 4 walls. So she comes down every other day or so to spend the day with us and to enjoy. And that way, she never married. And see, as I'm talking, you're already hearing stigmas that go along with somebody, which is the same thing that you hear with somebody with Alzheimer's. So you assume this single woman is this crazy cat lady, when in the meantime, she has a doctorate degree from Johns Hopkins and all these other different degrees that she has earned, but just has elected to live a life in solitude, and she now comes down and spends the day with us.
A quick comment and then a quick question. My comment is very simple. I'm really very moved and very impressed with all of the work that you have done individually within your communities, and I just can't express my thanks for the stories that you've shared today. I think if I were involved with any one of them, I'd feel very proud of myself. So thank you for that. But my question, Dr. Gore, is really for you. You got to the point, you had mentioned in your presentation that you were kind of in a position where you just needed help, where you kind of look to God and, for guidance and to make things happen. So I was wondering if you can expand on that just a little bit.
Sure. There's multiple different stories. One of those was that in thinking about the clinic, I knew that I had to have an electronic medical record system. And electronic medical record systems can run a couple $100,000. But actually, I also knew that I needed a system in a way that could capture a lot of demographic data. I need to know gender, disease, state, county that they come from. And so trying to integrate those is very difficult. The only way that I could think of that could do that is to have a program written out of Microsoft Access. However, getting somebody to program that and then be able to get them to continue to support that would, again, cost a lot of money. I have, my parents are both in medicine. I have 3 older sisters. 2 out of 3 are in the medicine. The 3rd one went into computers. We really didn't know much about what she did. We loved her anyway, but she did something with computers. So anyway, I'm from Kentucky, and we like our basketball team. And we had the SEC tournament down here in Nashville, and I got her tickets. And so she came down here, and this was when we were going through this process. And I was talking to her, and I said, I I'm thinking about trying to do this clinic, but I need to, I really need this program out of Access. She said, well, that's what I do. I'm an Access programmer. Really? Yeah. Do you think you could do this? Yeah, I think so. So during Thanksgiving, Christmas, we would get together and the two of us wrote our electronic medical record system. So we were able to write this program so that we're able to enter the patient's data, we're able then to filter the data, we're able to print out every single note as a PDF file and through a HIPAA-compliant e-fax, fax that to the referring physician. Now, why did my sister go into computers? Because years down the road, I was going to need her to do that.
C.G. Gladowers from Holy Trinity, Raleigh, North Carolina. My question is, much of what you have said, all of you, deal with private human services. Have you had any, how do you work with the statutory requirements to provide these services?
I can answer mine. Our clinic is in the church school of our church. And it's a 501c3 medical clinic. We don't have any medications. We don't do any procedures, no blood draws. And so because of that, we're not under OSHA. We are bound by the same HIPAA rules, and we follow the HIPAA rules. We have encryption software. We have different levels of passwords for our computers. We thought about that and how we could be compliant.
And then for us at the Philoxenia House, we're actually governed by the city and the state, and we're licensed, and we don't provide any services to them. Our service is, actually not our service, but what we do is we provide housing, so we're part of the housing authority, both locally in our city and then in the statewide, and we have to fill those out every year, and we're a ministry of our church, so we fall under the 501c3.
How about meals, John?
So meals is actually one of the great bonding pieces from it. It's not provided by the church, but volunteers grocery shop for some of the guests. The guests sometimes create meals for us. We have a social hour. We've had gatherings together where we do things, but their meals are usually on their own or something that's coordinated together with the church and the homes.
Yeah, when it comes to meals, the same thing. They're not provided by the church. They're provided by volunteers, and it's as if I made dinner and I was bringing it over to your house as a friend. The other thing too, with the compassionate care ministry, we are requiring that the person be over age 21, and we are conducting background checks. Even if the person has been a parishioner for 40 years or 4 weeks, they will go through background checks. And then we've also, from an insurance perspective, if one of the visits entails maybe taking a parishioner to lunch, are we liable, things like that. And we've looked into it, and I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but I strongly suggest you just refer to your insurance companies. But the driver's primary insurance would come into play, and then secondary would be the churches. So we are requiring that people have a valid driver's license, and if they are to drive anybody, and that they have valid car insurance.
Do we have any other questions? I'm not sure.
Yes, sorry. John Sempeles, Parish President, St. Demetrius Greek Orthodox Church in Fort Worth, Texas. This is a question for Liz. Liz, in your presentation, one of the bullet points was matching a person's God-given talent to the ministry need. In your experience, was there a specific methodology for that, or was it organic, or could you tell us how you achieved that goal?
I think working closely with clergy, knowing the people that are volunteering and confidentially conferring with clergy about what gifts and talents are needed versus what the ministry need is. And I think to some degree it is organic. Now, I will say that the model that we've used for this compassionate care, we're hoping to apply it to our other ministries as well. But we did clearly outline, and I give you my card, I'd be welcome to share it with you, what's required of a compassionate care volunteer. I mean, it's pretty much, and it's not so much about what time you show up and when you leave, it's really about the traits, your ability to listen, your ability to not feel the need to tell somebody what they should be feeling or not feeling. And when you go through that list, even myself, I'll say, well, wait a minute, I don't do all that. The challenge is, can I do it? Will I be cognizant of the fact that I need to do it? So that is very clear right up front, and we do ask in the training that people really think about it, because they're not going to do themselves any good, or the recipient of the ministry services if they choose to do something that's kind of just not in their DNA.
My name is Fodi Cattell. I'm from Three Hierarchs, Champaign, Illinois. We're located about 2 hours south of Chicago. I'm the director of Nika House, the Orthodox Christian Student Living Center on the campus of the University of Illinois. Our house was founded 11 years ago by the Orthodox Christian Alumni Association, made up of graduates of the university who were very active in the OCF. Our house originally was co-ed, and right now it's been male for the last 4 years, so it's almost like a fraternity house. We can house up to 16 young men. We're certified by the University of Illinois so that freshmen are allowed to live in our house. The house is also gives an identity to the Orthodox Christian Fellowship organization of the campus. The students of the OCF meet every Tuesday evening for a meeting, a free meal provided by one of our parishioners who owns a restaurant. So every Tuesday night they get a free meal. Our priest, Father Michael Condos from Three Hierarchs, is there to help them in their discussions. During Lent, we have compline services in our chapel, and we celebrate the feast day of St. Philip with the liturgy there as well. The OCF is very active and very much involved in our parish. And on a given Sunday, we have 20 students or more, sometimes up to 30 students in attendance. The students are involved in the parish. A number of them help teach Sunday school. Some of them help chant. We also have the policy that the students eat free, so if we have any type of dinners, there's never any charge for the students. Our parish is involved in an organization called Empty Tomb in Champaign-Urbana that helps the poor and needy. And every year they have an activity where all the parishes, all the Christian churches in town get together and pack food boxes and then deliver them. And this past spring, Three Hierarchs Parish was on the top of the list because we had 20 college students plus another 16 or so parishioners involved. So we had almost 40 people involved in this project. The students see our parish as their home away from home, and every now and then Father will receive a letter from a graduate expressing how important Three Hierarchs and the OCF ministry and the house ministry was to them while they were students. This just recently, maybe about a month ago, we received a check of $5,000 from the grandparents of a student from Detroit, Michigan, because that student expressed how important our ministry was to them. Thank you.
Just a quick comment. In the planning of this panel, there was a wealth of parish ministries that we had to choose from. You are all doing beautiful and amazing ministries and amazing work of the Lord. And it's beautiful that we can come together and share all these things and be inspired by one another and maybe make us think of what we can go back and do more. But I think it was either Father Gregory or Father Dean said, it's just about looking at your parish and the needs of the people there and how you can serve them more.
I have a question for Dr. Gore and the St. Samson Clinic. I'm Jean Novus. I'm honored to serve as the Parish Council President at St. Nectarios in Palatine, Illinois. I'm also a physician, and we are considering some type of senior help in our community. I just had a question. How did you get the prescriptions paid for your patients that did not have insurance? Like Humira, obviously that's very expensive, because that, you know, for you, that's a very big deal for those patients.
In rheumatology, generally speaking, that's changed a little bit in the last 6 months, but generally speaking in rheumatology, either our medications are very, very cheap or they're extraordinarily expensive. So it turns out with medications that you're suggesting, Humira, Enbrel, Simponi, Orencia, etc., those medicines cost about $25,000, $30,000 a year. If you have no insurance, if they're prescribed by a board-certified rheumatologist, then the drug companies give them away for free. So we've gotten patients approved for over $1 million worth of free medicines.
Truly remarkable. I think we're wrapping it up. We have to thank our panel. Father Gregory, thank you. Johnny, thank you. Father Mark, thank you. Dr. Gore, thank you. Father Dean, thank you. And Liz, thank you. I think it's been remarkable. And each of you, if you are inspired, you know, when I was in kindergarten, don't give me a microphone, sorry. I learned 3 things: stop, look, and listen. So stop, look, and listen. If you stop today and you've looked and listened and are inspired, hopefully some seeds were planted. Go for it. Thank you all. Your Eminence, we're concluding. I think the Finance Committee has a meeting here in about 10 minutes. Thank
you. I would like to add, on behalf of the members of the Holy Eparchial Synod, our thanks to the panelists. We missed some of them, we heard some of them. It so happened that I could guess what Father Dean spoke about because I visited the place and I know the work there. And also I would like to express our thanks to Father Constantine Sitaras for directing the family facility and the family institution and ministry. And we thank you, Father Costa. When we enter, I asked, are you directing this panel thing? He said, no. I have a younger generation in the person of Father Gregory, and he said they can do a very good job like I did. If I may say something, I understand the tremendous significance of the dynamism in whatever you were describing. Dynamism is behind everything that you said, I guess. It's a very central characteristic, right? It's not for someone, it's for all of you. And the other one is sustainability, the sustainability of something. What happens sometimes, people have an idea, they start something, there is no sustainability, it stops after 1 year or 2 years. It's important to have the dynamism and the sustainability. I would add a third component in the equation, and this is initiative and inventiveness. all of them have a character of inventiveness. They are original things, they are not routine things. They might become routine, but originally are very inventive, very creative kind of items. So thank you, because that's a tremendous, of tremendous importance item to have initiative and creativity in a dynamic way and in a sustainable mode of action and function. Now it so happened that we have with us today the two representatives of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. And they are characteristic people of what we are describing. Metropolitan Ambrosius of Korea. He was born in Greece. He actually has a brother who is one of the metropolitans of the Church of Greece. He is a metropolitan of the place of Saint Nectarius. Aegina Hydra. Studied in Greece theology, came to the States to study theology at Holy Cross, Princeton University, worked on a doctoral level and got a doctor's degree, and at some point he felt that he had to serve to Korea. So he went there. Did he know Korean? Not a word. He knew English, and he thought, since I'm serving here, I have to learn Korean. Not easy. It's not like in any other language that we know. He learned Korean to the point of being able, with the qualification that he had, to present himself to the university, a big university there, and say, I'm willing to teach Greek language, Greek history, Greek religion, this kind of thing. The people saw the credentials, they gave him the possibility. Here starts a program, initiative, dynamism, developing so fast and creating such an impression that it was need for assistant, for a second or third person to cover the need for the teaching. And here comes again the initiative. He manages to send people to Greece to study and write dissertations in Greek language in Athens. How about that? Huh?
Amazing.
We have this type of example. I don't want to go further. There are many other things. Metropolitan of Kydonia and Apokoronu, he's another example of person of initiative. He has a diocese with a number of parishes. They are small villages. The center is Hanya, small villages around. But in addition to the parishes, the normal parishes, has a big number of small chapels. You end up with 180. What he does, goes and liturgizes himself continuously from one place to the other. Objectively and historically, I don't know personally, you might know, but I don't know personally of any bishop of the Orthodox Church who liturgizes every second day or even every day throughout the year. That's dynamism, that's inventiveness, but that's the way he keeps everyone in his diocese in connection with the church. As another example. So we have both of them here, and when we were discussing about the schedule of this afternoon, and I say, this is the program. Both of them said, we have to be there. We would like to be there and listen because we might find something could be transferable to our situation either in Korea or in Hanya. They didn't say, well, we know enough, we don't need, I mean, we have plenty of services, we don't. Let's go to that, we need that. Father Costa, the need to learn continuously. You cannot be inventive, you cannot be dynamic if you are not open to learning every day of your life. If you stop learning, you enter a condition of neutrality and finally, end of any activity. So thank you again, congratulations for your presentation today. Thanks for the questions and the examples mentioned. Really, we are amazed at the number of things that we hear being done in our parishes by people who have this spirit of initiative and the passion to do things for the benefit of the other people. Thank you, and keep the good work and the good spirit. Keep dynamism, sustainability, and initiative by any and all costs. And may God be with you always. Thank you. The Metropolitan of Kydonia has been now excited and incited, and he wants to say 2 words.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Συγγνώμη για την καθυστέρηση. Απλώς ακούγοντας αυτά τα λίγα που ήρθα και άκουσα, που προφανώς όλοι σας η διακονία είναι πολύ περισσότεροι.
I would like to thank very much His Eminence, and being inspired by everything I heard here today, I would like to add 2 words as well.
Διαπιστώνω ότι οι ανάγκες των ανθρώπων είναι παντού ίδιες.
I have confirmed and affirmed that the needs of people everywhere are the same.
Ιδιαίτερα στον ιατρικό τομέα.
Ιδιαίτερα, especially in the field of medicine.
Και εμείς στα Χανιά που έχουμε το Γενικό Νοσοκομείο, που έχουμε πάρα πολλούς ανθρώπους και από άλλα νησιά.
And we in Chania that have the general hospital, and we have many people even from other islands.
Είχαμε προβληματιστεί για το πώς θέλουμε να αντιμετωπίσουμε τις δυσκολίες σε σοβαρά περιστατικά ανθρώπων οι οποίοι βρίσκονται στην εντατική.
We were faced with a great challenge, how we were going to minister and help the people who were facing very difficult physical and illnesses, especially people in ICU in very serious conditions.
Μετά από μια ασθένεια που πέρασα προσωπικά και διαπίστωσα ακόμα πόσο επιτακτική είναι η ανάγκη των συνοδών.
After a personal difficulty of health that I went through, and I came to realize and understand very, very deeply the need and that is needed for us to have people around us also that are helping us through these moments.
Απεφασίσαμε λοιπόν κάτω από το ναό του νοσοκομείου να έχουμε ένα χώρο με 12 κρεβάτια, με 4-5 δωμάτια, όπου μπαίνουν οι άνθρωποι οι οποίοι είναι από μακριά, οι άνθρωποι οι οποίοι έχουν δυσκολίες και δεν έχουν πού να πάνε να πληθούν και οτιδήποτε άλλο τους χρειάζεται.
We decided that underneath the hospital, in some lower space in the basement area, we created spaces, about 5 rooms, about 12 beds in total, for people, family members and friends of those who are being treated to have a space to rest, to wash up, and to take care of themselves.
Στο βιβλίο που έχουμε εκεί, επειδή έχουμε μάθει εδώ στην Κρήτη να εκφράζουμε τα συναισθήματά μας με μαντινάδες,
because in Crete, in the book that we have there at the hospital, we allowed for people to express their feelings, and especially we Cretans in what are called mandinades, a special construction of poems.
Εκεί διατυπώνεται ο πόνος αλλά και η ελπίδα των ανθρώπων.
And there is written, of course, the pain of people, but also their hope.
Έτσι λοιπόν το είπα αυτό για να γνωρίζετε όλοι ότι οι ανάγκες οι οποίες υπάρχουν μας δημιουργούν τη σκέψη έτσι ώστε εμείς να διακονήσουμε ανάλογα με τις περιστάσεις που χρειάζονται.
And I said all these things so that you can understand that sometimes the needs that arise become the impetus for us to create the things that will ultimately help people in their needs as well.
Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ και ομολογουμένως έχω πάρα πολλές σημειώσεις, έχω κρατήσει πολλές σημειώσεις οι οποίες θα μου δώσουν και εμένα τρόπους περισσότερης διακονίας.
I thank you all so very much, and especially I want you to know that I have kept many notes which will also provide me with ideas to implement within my own metropolis.
Καλή δύναμη στο έργο σας.
Good strength in all your endeavors.